Welcome. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Welcome to the Monday Night Muse. I am your host, Sound Engraver, of course, and I am back. I am back into the routine. Hopefully, all of you guys are doing well. Of course, before we get started, I want to make sure audio is sounding fine. I think StreamYard has a new audio output set of options. Actually, it's just one set of options. So there was a digital processing option which they took out. So hopefully you're not hearing any of the room noise. Hopefully they still have like a limiter or something like that. But let me know if you can hear me in the mic just fine. And until I see you, yeah, Sound Engraver's back. Yeah, and you sound fine. Thank you, Troy Pacelli. You're not the first comment, but I will just put you up first, just for the heck of it. And I will go ahead and welcome the chat. Now, I do think Melissa was first, and I will say welcome, Melissa. I'm glad to see you. I know that you had some mobile phone difficulties, technical difficulties, and you're away from streaming for a while, but good to have you. And you are first. Knitter, she impresses me. She said, "Wow, I was the first thumbs up." And second comment, well, I think everyone's a little late to the game because I've been away for a few weeks. Well, it feels like a few weeks, but I haven't been streaming for a few weeks. So I'm kind of easing into the routine, guys. So if I sound a little, disoriented or trying to collect my thoughts, I'm getting back to the routine. I don't think I'm disoriented. I think I'm fine. And Big Al Presents says, have a great show, Sound Engraver. And, thank you guys all for covering. I think it was Troy who did Dune last week, David Lynch's Dune last Monday, but I couldn't remember what was happening the previous Monday. I was gone. But yeah, I'm back, and we're back on Monday nights. But if someone is so inclined to do Monday nights, it's no competition, So it's all good. But yeah, I am happy to be back. And we are welcoming Brian Gilmartin. Welcome. And the professor, he says, I'm ready for the wisdom of the Monday Night Muse to descend once more. Well, I hope it goes well. And I think the conversation is actually, as far as my discussion on artistic feedback, I have a feeling it may be short because my notes are kind of short. I don't have too much to say. Maybe impromptu and notes together, if that's a thing. But yeah, and Owen Lister is here. I think he's talking about robot. Is it like a mech anime show? Real Steel. Nice sounding title. Oh, good. Oh, Asian Boomer, welcome. Thank you. I know sometimes you're occupied on Monday nights, so good to see you. And nice job on the stream again, as per usual. And yeah, I'll say it again because it's been a few weeks, and I can say it, but I do like you and Troy together. It's you both have really good chemistry, and I love the back and forth. One of my favorite things about your stream is when Troy says something, and then you have kind of I can almost see you have a visceral reaction, like, oh, here we go. Not to Troy, but to the geek news. And sometimes your reactions are pretty funny. I like listening to you guys. And I don't know anything about Star Trek, so when you guys go on Star Trek, I'm still listening to you guys, but I was thinking, well, yeah, it's 15 minutes. I'll listen to some Star Trek trivia I probably know nothing about. But I really like you guys doing your study hall. And I think that's everyone for now. And let me check if my YouTube is working. I might just close out of YouTube. Yep. Just had to mute myself. And we'll just go ahead and get started. And to anyone who's, may have missed the stream and you're seeing this as a recording, this is for artists who are looking for feedback, and artists who want feedback, and artists who need feedback. Every artist needs feedback of some kind, and I want to just talk about, have a discussion on what feedback is, my experience as not just a violin student, a composition student, music student in general, but also as a teacher, providing feedback that is constructive, but also honest as well. And so without further ado, we'll just get back to my notes, or we'll get to my notes. I was seeing Melissa's welcome back sound engraver. We'll get to the notes. We'll have discussions. If you guys have any questions, comments, and any thoughts on what I have to say about artistic feedback, we'll just go ahead and take it away. So I have my notes up here, and it'll be pretty brief, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. So artistic feedback. Well, let's first talk about what feedback is. So for the professional artists, this is for professional artists or artists who aim to be professional and masterful in their craft. Feedback is anything that has the artist gauge and assess on how to improve their project or their body of work. It can come in many forms. It can come in the form of advice, whether that is from a mentor, a teacher, a professor, an instructor, like I'm a violin instructor, maybe a peer, maybe a public figure, maybe an artist you really love, maybe an artist you are inspired by, and an artist really you want to imitate or even emulate at some point in your life. So that's one form. Feedback is often advice, often brought to you by someone who might be older or at least more experienced in the craft than you are in. It can also come in the form of constructive criticism, and I think this is a very important form. As a teacher, as a violin instructor, I first go with the strengths. I first, when a student, doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the level, I first see when they play something for me, I go first to their strengths with maybe a compliment or two. And then I go immediately after that, to what needs improving. And I tend to spend most of the time in the lesson or in the session on what needs improved. I would say, let's say if I was teaching 60 minutes, let's say I was teaching a 60-minute lesson, I would spend maybe the first 10 minutes on hearing the music or hearing the composition, and then just kind of mentally taking notes, thinking what's good, what's strong. And then for the remainder, the remaining 50 minutes of the lesson, the first 10 minutes, good stuff, last 50 minutes on stuff that needs worked on, technique, musicality, expression, and all of that. So constructive criticism, I think, is best, is most befitting when you give good points, when you give the person, the artist, the input that involves their strengths, and then really work on what needs improved, what needs polished. And as far as constructive criticism, as a student, in my experience, as a college student, as a music student, I had professors who were just so hard on the nose on what was wrong with my piece. I don't remember actually my professors, well, at least not in my undergrad. I don't remember the professors at the University of Washington saying, what was good first. They usually went and started nitpicking right away. So I would say some instructors, some mentors can actually be quite hard in their criticism, but it's still important to learn. It's still important to see why they think that. If they're, if it's a professor that's 10 years into the game or 30 years into the game, it's still important, even if they're, nitpicking at what's wrong. It's important to pick that up, especially as a student. And I might actually, as a violin instructor myself, I kind of nitpick, especially when the technique needs iteration. It's just too important to overlook or miss or ignore altogether. So we first talked about advice coming from the form of a mentor or an artist that you're inspired by. But we also talk about constructive criticism. Now, keep in mind that constructive criticism, I would say, should primarily come from either another professional in your area, ideally further along in the skill or in the profession than you are in. So as I said before, look to a teacher, look to a mentor. This can come in the form of a paid lesson. So, I would love to invest one of these days or years. I would love to invest in a couple months worth, maybe 6 months worth of, a boot camp kind of and violin instruction for me. I've played violin for 22, getting into 23 years, but I would love at least a couple lessons from a world-class musician, because I would need that kind of feedback. I would need that kind of critique on my technique and musicality. So do keep in mind that when you are looking for constructive criticism, you're looking for it primarily from a person who has more experience than you have. It can be a peer, especially if it's a knowledgeable peer, and it could be a peer that is on your tier. It could be a peer or a colleague that's on your level and maybe has an eye for something that you might not have. Maybe this person, maybe a colleague has a strength and you have a strength, and you guys, go back and forth on what needs improving. But really look for constructive criticism from someone who has had more experience. A lot of my music mentors were at least 20, 30 years older than me, much more experienced. And so that's what I wanted to pass on to you. Some other feedback is negative criticism. Now, no matter how harsh, no matter how aggressive the criticism, let's say you publish a short story and you've got reviews on Amazon or something like that, and it's a bad review. Well, as harsh or aggressive or as disagreeable as that review might be, what could you find out of that review that you could take into account, saying, well, maybe they said this because they don't prefer the style. Now, that doesn't really give them the excuse to, just be aggressive toward you in the review. But maybe you can take into account, well, maybe this person, or maybe even a group of people or a larger audience, is looking for this kind of style or this kind of trope or this kind of technique in my writing that I can consider for a larger audience. So, look at negative criticism as an opportunity to see, oh, what's lacking in my art? What don't they like about my art? Could I accommodate? Now, if they're being pessimistic or cynical, no, you want to be true to your art. You want to maintain the integrity of your art, and you want to keep your art as authentic to you as possible. But could you accommodate? Could you think, oh yeah, I could write a lot more with a lot more brevity. I think I write too much prose, or maybe my prose is too long before dialogue or something like that. So maybe they have a style or a kind of style of art that they prefer, and you could integrate that into your own art. So also keep in mind negative criticism, even if it's rather disagreeable, even if it's something you might even disagree on, but take into account why they might kind of pick on you. I would absolutely love being criticized that way. I know that sounds strange now that I think about it, but if you're getting flack for your art, that means you're popular. So when people say, oh, well, why'd you get a thumbs down? It's like, that makes me excited. That means my YouTube videos are popular. So if you guys see a thumbs down, I can't see it right now, but if there's a thumbs down on my live stream, I'm not saying you should, but that makes me excited. It's like, yes, I'm getting traction. So yes, constructive criticism, but also negative criticism. And I would say the best kind of feedback is really feedback that is more coming internally. And this comes from absorbing art constantly. For intuition to kind of, whet that knife, get that knife sharper, that intuition sharper. You have to constantly be referring to art, be reviewing art, refer, review, and enjoy artists who inspire you. Enjoy art of different kinds. For me, I go back and forth between different genres of electronic music, but I also go back to classical music, and sometimes I'll listen to well-crafted popular music, although I should be better about that. I'm really not that great with popular music. I need to listen to more John Mayer, I think. But constantly absorb art. So if you're a visual artist, constantly be referring to visual art, constantly be referring to art first that you love, that you already enjoy looking at or working in, but also look at visual art that you may not have realized existed. Maybe you don't know much about art history of the Chinese Dynasty, for instance, but it's a topic that kind of intrigues you. Well, look at that. Look at the history. Look at what makes that unique to Western art or Middle Eastern art of that time. What was different about that art in terms of culture, how that art was produced, how that art was made, what was composed, what material was used, that kind of technique, and get into that. Now you learn, I think, to be honest, you do learn more about that in the academics, but there's no stopping you from going to a public library or even going to a university and sitting in an art library and just absorbing art, or going to a museum or seeing virtual exhibitions. I guess virtual exhibitions are happening now, so check out virtual exhibitions. But the point is, constantly refer to art, absorb it. When you absorb art on a regular basis, that is feedback. That is instant feedback that has you assess, oh, how can I incorporate this? Or what did this artist do in his lifetime, or in his time of human history, and how can I apply that? You're constantly, your brain is picking up things, maybe even on a subconscious level, that you're not realizing. But what's happening over time with practice and constantly absorbing art, you're actually giving yourself good constructive feedback. So don't shy away from that. That is another kind of feedback, that you're always looking for something of excellence, or you're looking at masterfully made pieces of art, or music, as it is with my case. So that's what I like to say about that. Absorbing your art on a regular basis fashions your instinct on what you need to do to get better. So that's feedback. It's for the professional artist, feedback is anything that helps the artist engage on what needs to be improved upon on a project, on an individual basis, or a body of work, or a style developed over time. It can come as advice. It can come as constructive criticism. It can come in the form of negative criticism. And it also comes in the form of internal assessment by absorbing art constantly. So that is feedback. That out of the way, we got to discuss what feedback is not. Feedback, if you're looking to be a professional, feedback is not affirmations. It's not a pat on the back. It's not compliments. The best example I can give is my experience as a professional musician with an audience I may have in a violin performance, or for a violin performance. So last Friday, I got back Wednesday, but I had a wedding gig that following Friday. And so I took the day off. I took Thursday off. I relaxed a little bit, but then I practiced and learned these different numbers for a wedding gig. And there were a handful of people after playing for 45 minutes saying, "Oh, great job. That sounds excellent. That's just wonderful." But I was constantly concentrating. I actually had memory slips. I had intonation problems. I was wondering if I was even smiling because I was concentrating so hard, and you kind of want to smile for a wedding. It's such a happy occasion. And I even asked my friend whose son was the one getting married, and I asked her, "Hey, did I smile? Did you see me smile?" And she's like, "I wasn't even paying attention." But I was constantly thinking all of these technical things. But I had people say, "Wow, that's just beautiful. That's such a good job." Now, while I love their applause and I appreciate their applause and I thank them for their applause and compliments, sometimes in my performances they're very high compliments. I don't take their compliments as feedback on how to get better. That might sound obvious, now saying that out loud, but when you're dealing with an audience who, especially at a wedding, they might not be concert goers. They might not go to the symphony. They might not be, in the cultivated, the couth society that goes to the nice symphonies and the ballets and the dances and all of that. Well, if you have your person just walking down the street noticing a violinist, well, in my experience, it's always been kind of a delight. I always like delighting in serving people and playing beautiful music, popular music, fiddle music, whatever the case may be. And I can play something and have an atrocious mistake, or just not remember a song the way it should be sung or something like that. But usually it's compliments. I've never had an audience member say, oh, this is what you should have done better. That is what I expect from a violin instructor or a world-class musician or something like that. So, for me, feedback and input, that needs to be from a professional violinist. That will help me gauge what is better for me to do and to accomplish as a violinist in terms of technique, expression, and musicality. Now, encouragement, that kind of affirmation is like, oh, good job, beautiful work, beautiful art. Encouragement is always a good thing, but do take it as encouragement. And we often need encouragement as artists. Encouragement, I would say, comes more often from peers at our level, which is fine. And you should encourage your peers. And it should be a back and forth with input, feedback, and encouragement. I mean, don't just have feedback without encouragement, but don't have only encouragement. You need feedback. I think the reason why you don't need encouragement so often as you might want is because as you practice your craft, you're going to develop this instinct, or at least enough instinct, on what needs improving. Now, affirmations and encouragement can be feedback, I would say, if there's a reason for that compliment or for that affirmation or that encouragement. So, for instance, when I endorse on Twitter an album of an artist, it could be an independent artist, it could be a world famous artist. It doesn't matter. I'll endorse what I think is objectively good. When I endorse them on Twitter, I usually give a reason why I like them, or actually, more importantly, more specifically, when I endorse a work, an album, or a single track, I tell why on Twitter I endorse them. So, for instance, it could be an album that gives me a really good general impression, but if it's a specific track, like, whoa, track 2, the sounds and textures in track 2 really caught me off guard in a really good way, that's an endorsement I give. So when I endorse people, when I retweet their work, first of all, for me, I actually don't endorse or retweet people's work of art until I think it's objectively good. Like, if I see objectively this is a good piece of art, then I'll endorse it. If I feel, even if it's an artist I like and I feel like they didn't quite make it in terms of technique or musical composition because I've heard better from them, it's just me. It's like, oh, or if the music didn't quite make the mark but just sends me pure delight, that's enough actually of a reason for me to endorse them. But when I endorse, or I actually usually, if you see me on Twitter endorsing someone or retweeting an album, I usually don't just retweet. I really don't like just retweeting. I always like to retweet with a comment. And so applauding someone's work, I more often than not, I can't even think. I'm probably sure 95% there's a reason why I just have had to retweet it. Unless it's someone like Sideliner, whose work is always awesome, and I can't think of any other better reason than just listen to his stuff. So that's what feedback isn't. Feedback comes in the form of advice and criticism and absorbing art on your own time. But feedback isn't compliments. It's not affirmations. Don't ask for feedback and think, oh, that's excellent work. That's feedback. That's not feedback, I'm afraid to say. Maybe I'm strict, but I'm a teacher. I think I've said this before, but when I pay one of my students a compliment, their eyes just get like really big, because I'm generally pretty nitpicky when it comes to violin performance in terms of technique and musicality. So when I said, "Oh wow, that's exactly what you need to do. Good job," you almost see a lift in their posture. It's like, "Whoa, she complimented me," because I'm one of those teachers that I encourage, but an actual compliment, it doesn't come often. Um, it, I would say maybe once or twice in a lesson, if that, along with encouragement. But if the lesson's kind of going nowhere, I get kind of firm and say, no, we have to work on this. This is very, very important that we work on this. We need to polish this and all that. So a lot of what needs to be improved upon than compliments. So it's like compliments for me, it's like chocolate to a kid. They're like, whoa, she said, yay. And actually what tends to happen, they practice harder that week, because it's important. Like it's like, wow, she said that, because they've seen me play. They've seen me play violin. So anyway, I think that is all my notes. So the last question I would ask you as artists, whether you guys are beginning in the field or professional, why do you want feedback? Are you truly looking for professional input, or are you only looking for affirmations and compliments? It's kind of a hard truth, but I have seen, whether on Twitter or YouTube or different things like that, I have seen people say, what do you think of this? And then I'll say something and I'll get no response. So I don't know if they, like, wow, I wanted her to say that it was a good piece of work. And I'm not one to shy away from saying something has potential, but I'm also, I'm one of those, I'm a teacher. I'm a music teacher. So I'll say what has potential, what the strengths are, but what also could be improved. So that is my take on artistic feedback. I hope that was helpful for you. Please send me your feedback on that. It's what I think. It's what I think. But we'll go ahead and see the chat and see what's happening. And first night in 3 weeks, and I'm spilling water on me. Owen Lister says, Real Steel is a movie starring Hugh Jackman with robots basically doing boxing matches with music by Danny Elfman. Cool. I'm glad. Is this new or is this older? If it's new, I'm glad Elfman still has work going on. That's great. Very wholesome and fun to watch. Well, wholesome's good. Wholesome's great. You'll have to clarify, because I don't know Gordon Ramsay. Is he a personality? What are your thoughts on Gordon Ramsay's method of critiquing? If someone would clarify, is he an artist, or is he a YouTuber? I'm not familiar with that name. Back to the Drawing Board says, hello, the chat. Welcome back to the Drawing Board. It's good to see you. Good to have you. Brian Gilmartin says, constructive criticism can be very hard to take, especially when the one doing the criticism is harsh in their words. Yeah, I mean, oh man, you want to go to constructive criticism. I'm going to have a couple rants with this. There's nothing better for constructive criticism than being a music student at the University of Washington. There were tears in some lessons. And I get it. Like I needed some, I mean, to be honest, there were some weeks where I totally did not compose until the last minute. And professors know when you wait until the last minute to do something. So they were probably angry. I think they were angrier about that than the quality of my work. But I really, and I don't think any of the professors at the University of Washington are watching me doing a live stream. If you are, just mention yourselves in the chat or in the comments below. But I really don't remember getting positive feedback in that I don't remember much about the strengths. Maybe I remember my professor Huck Hodge saying I had a way with working into transitions, and I had a way with working into structure. But in terms of what was going on, very much those professors, and I kind of agree with their school of thought. If they wanted you to excel at a certain thing, they were very much nitpicky. They had a fine tooth comb at every lesson you came into. And some lessons were hard. Man, I remember being a college student, not just as a composition major, but as a violin. I wasn't a violin major. I never had a violin performance degree. But I remember taking violin lessons because you had 2 years of lessons to complete as a music education major, and I think as a composition major too. There were, it's a lot of university students who did music majors. They would probably agree. If the university is tough, if it's full of tough professors, or the School of Music, for instance, violin lessons was an hour of dread. Like, you would be sweating bullets before entering that room. It was hard. It was hard. And you practiced and you got better for it. So if you want, well, I'm not saying people should go get an arts degree or a music degree to get constructive criticism, but I think it's important. I think there's a way to do it. For me, as I had said before, start with the strengths and then spend most of the time on what needs improving. Especially with violin technique, you just have to get the technique accurate. I would dare say you have to get it right in order to play violin well. Not only that, you have to get violin technique right for the sake of your health. I mean, it's a very athletic instrument in terms of the hand and the arm, and also the shoulder and the neck. And if you don't have the right posture, there are violinists out there, professionals who've developed carpal tunnel, or who have needed hand surgery. So, I mean, there's a bit of it's imperative to get that right. So I'm not shy from focusing, 90% of the lesson on technique, especially with beginning students. And it doesn't matter the age. It's just technique is just too important. But yeah, I mean, harsh criticism, yes. But why is it harsh? Well, when I was a college student, it was harsh because I thought I had it together as a composer. Like, I thought I was something special. I know that sounds harsh saying that, but we might actually have some hubris, or not hubris, but we might have kind of, as artists, kind of this internal pride, like we're something special. And it's not to say that our work we create isn't special or it can't be special, but there's some, the stereotype that artists are sensitive is a stereotype for a reason, because we can be sensitive with our work. We can even be territorial. So when someone's crossing that line, we feel like we're invaded. And I got over that after being in college, but it was part of that process. It was part of developing a backbone and getting that, receiving that, being the recipient of something that is not pleasant to hear, but necessary to hear. We can't, as artists, we have to let go of the fact that we're how do I put this? Sometimes I think, at least in my experience, sometimes I think I'm better than I actually am. That really did happen as a college student for me. In my 20s, getting into 26, 27 years old, I kind of had a bad assumption of myself. Like, I thought I was better than I really was. So when your piece of work does get knocked, and kind of just said, this is, this needs work. Get better. Like if if you have a professor, before you leave the room, the professor says, get better, just make it better by next week. It's like, it's almost like, going to a boss's office. It was that intense for me at the University of Washington. It was kind of that tense with at least one of my instructors at the University of Milwaukee. One of my other professors, he was so laid back. I got away with way too much with him, and I had him for a year, and then I had a harder teacher the next year. But anyway, I'm kind of remembering all these things. Yes, Melissa, you have good taste. Oh yeah, speaking of classical music, before I forget, excuse me, I think I ate my dinner too fast. I was anticipating the excuse me, the live stream, so I probably scarfed down that rice a little too fast. But I will. It's in the works, as they say. I will be doing a rewatch at the end of the year, in third week of December, for Fantasia 2000, and it is shorter. It's shorter than the Fantasia of 1940. Great works though, famous works. Actually, the Sorcerer's Apprentice is still a segment in that film, and that's okay. I kind of wish they did something else besides Sorcerer's Apprentice, but they wanted to probably keep that continuity. That film was released December 17th of 1999, and so I think the date is December 19th, 2020 for the rewatch. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. The sequences are great. They're very good sequences, and it's famous people. James Earl Jones is there. Itzhak Perlman, who is probably the most famous living violinist now, is there. Penn and Teller, and so they have these famous people kind of in between the segments. Steve Martin, I think, is between one of them. Between one of the segments, so it's a fun one, but it's only in about an hour and 15 minutes, so it'd be a fast rewatch. So I hope you can come, Melissa. Owen Lister says, what's an example of harsh criticism versus pessimistic criticism? Well, you got to be a little clear about pessimistic. If the person's just being negative for the sake of being negative, if that's what you mean by pessimism, there's still something you could take from that. There's still something you could take for that. I mean, unless they're just throwing out slurs or being vulgar or having no reason. If they have no reason at all for why they dislike your work, then you can disregard it or ignore it. And I certainly wouldn't fight it. Well, as a Christian, I wouldn't fight it anyway. But that's something you can ignore. But what if they're what if it is approached? What if it is presented to you in a rather disagreeable way? But there's this one nugget of input that you're thinking, oh well, okay, they gave me a reason why they didn't like it. Now, harsh criticism can be constructive criticism. Harsh criticism, it's constructive criticism if it's anything that makes your art better, if it's anything that has you assess and reassess and evaluate, okay, how they're saying it. Like if it's a teacher, let's say you're paying, I mean, for me, it'd be like probably $200 a lesson, but let's say you're paying $100 a month for music lessons. And your teacher is really strict. Well, they're strict. I mean, I'm strict. Sometimes, I don't go overboard. I never go overboard. But sometimes I'm really firm. One reason why I'm firm is if the student just is not getting a concept, and I explain it in different ways, or they're not practicing, or if they're not listening to something very specific I'm saying, I will be firm. Why? Well, one, what I say is going to better their musicality as a violin player. The other thing too is their parents are paying for lessons. Now, some parents do pay for their kids to just have fun in music. And if it's that kind of parent, I do back off. If the parent does not want me to be authentically forward in my technique and advice, to get their student better in music. If it's just more of a status thing, like it's true. Some people have their kids in music lessons for a social status thing. It's kind of sad. So if it's that kind of parent, then yeah, I gauge it and I say, okay, well, okay, I'll back off. If you want me just to make music lessons as fun and carefree as possible, then that's what you want to do with your money, and I want to honor that. But if the parent is expecting results, I will be forward. I will hold my students. They could be 6 years old and I'll hold them accountable. I actually grew up in a culture, I grew up in Seattle. So, Japan and South Korea are on the other side of the ocean. It might be far, but culturally speaking, that was an import city at the time, especially in the 90s. And I had a lot, like, I was in different orchestras in middle school and high school, and it was a huge Korean American population where the culture was, as far as musically speaking, quite rigorous. I mean, these were cream of the crop students, and I was among them. So that sense of drive and I've got to get this done, that was actually built in me, from my childhood. I was taken to task. I was held accountable as a student. I learned this at a young age, at least as a violinist. When I became a college student, as a composition student, I got lazy. I got too lazy. But yeah, harsh criticism is okay. Especially if it's coming from a mentor. If it's coming from a person who you could be paying the person to help you with your craft, or it could come in the manner of a professor in a school, whatever the case may be. Harsh criticism is fine. It's not comfortable. I'm not saying it is. And harsh doesn't mean unkind. Like I could be strict, I could be forward, but I'm never unkind. I'm never unkind. There can be very, very domineering teachers out there that I think teachers have no place to be condescending. So don't spend so much time with a teacher that is just constantly condescending. They might be just really sad about life. But no, harsh criticism, especially if it's coming from a place where the teacher wants to see you better, that's fine. Harsh, I guess I should say, harsh. I use the word harsh for negative criticism. So if someone actually is quite abrasive in their review of your work, well, if it's just, you have to discern where, like, okay, is he or she trying to help me, or are they just trying to rip me apart? Then if you're sensing that they're just trying to rip you apart, then okay, take it into account. But if they are trying to help you and you think that they're ripping you apart, that's just going to take some discernment, and you get that discernment as you get older over time. The best way to really get that discernment is start taking art lessons. And I know that costs money. I mean, I'm a music teacher, so I know it could be $100, $200 a month, but for someone to frequently hold you accountable every week, that's really good. That's really good to have, if you want to be a professional. If you don't want to be a professional, if you just do it as a hobby, then no, I'm not. This commentary is more for people who do want to be professional artists, or at least approach their art in a professional way. Sound engravers, just say Star Wars is better than Star Trek. That will get you a thumbs down or two. Well, I can't say it though, because I haven't watched Star Trek like I've watched Star Wars, so I don't know. So I could say it, but that wouldn't be me being objective, because I don't know Star Trek. So, but I did say it, technically speaking. I did read that out loud, so maybe I will get a thumbs down for that. Brian says, funny you mentioned the Chinese Dynasty, considering the pic I shared a few days ago. I don't remember that. was it a piece of art that you drew, or was it something you shared? I couldn't remember. I'm trying to catch up with the crowd, the Facebook group page, Professor Geek Facebook group page. I'm now that I'm back in the routine. Today's my second day in the routine. So I had Saturday was my first day of work. Then I had Sunday off. Well, I had that wedding gig, but that was a nice, easy gig. It was like 45 minutes. I was like, I'm done. Go home. But I did have to practice a few hours to get my hands strong again, because I was without my violin for 11 days. That's why, I was telling my students, I was like, guys, okay, this is how important practicing is. I a professional who's done violin for 22 years or so, when I'm away from my violin, I couldn't take it with me to the trip, unfortunately. It was just too impractical. I wouldn't have had time to practice anyway. It was my sister's wedding, and so we were just so busy. And then if I wasn't, doing stuff for that, I was traveling. So I want to have practiced anyway. So, if I'm away, for 10 to 11 days for my instrument, and I feel the effects, I can't even imagine what a person in their second year feels like, 11 days away. It's so important to be frequent in your practicing. I felt, 45 minutes usually is nothing to me. I don't feel any strain. I could play 45 minutes straight, but after 11 days without my instrument, I was feeling like, oh my goodness, my hands hurt. Yeah. Oh, and Lister says, I'll be honest, the harsh to negative criticism is a big fear of mine when it comes to my art. I fear of not taking it well and snapping back and getting defensive. Well, that's a good point, because you can take criticism and assess what you need to assess, and if it is harsh or negative, and if you kind of are discerning a bad spirit about it, then of course you can ignore it. But do not get defensive. Now, and I probably was defensive when I was your age. I think, are you in your early 20s? That I think you outgrow that if you practice that. But I would strongly recommend try to get a backbone. Try to get a little bit. And by the way, any feedback, negative or not, any feedback on your art is awesome. You know why? It means your art at some level is getting traction. At some level is getting viewed, or in my case as a composer, is getting heard. Sometimes feedback is no feedback at all. Sometimes it's total silence. Whether that's not like a single track that doesn't make a sale or something like that. Sometimes it's excuse me. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, this track or this album is not getting the traction I thought I would. Let's reconsider what to do. Now, you do not want to be defensive. And that's another stereotype of artists, is artists getting territorial and defensive over their work. You really want to come from a place of grace. For me, as a Christian and someone who pursues, seeking the Lord and doing his work and delighting in the Lord, I can't get defensive. That's just not of the Holy Spirit. And so as an experimental electronic artist, if I get attacked or something, which I hope in a kind of a way, I hope happens, because then that means my music is picking up, it's taking off, but that might not happen. I don't know. Now, I want to say do that now, because I promise you I'm not that popular yet. But let's say my music does get some more Spotify listeners, or my YouTube channel gets more traction over the years, or some platform, maybe my website, something, which I was going to do that. I was going to do a website during this pandemic, and I have a website, but there's nothing on it. Let's say a platform I'm on really does get traction. My music gets traction, and I get some criticism on my art, harsh or otherwise. Well, I do understand that it's easy to get defensive, but it's important not to get defensive, because when you're defensive, it tells, if I get defensive, it tells me one thing. It tells me I'm taking too much pride in my art. And that's what artists really, really struggle with. And it doesn't matter what level. It does not matter what level you're on. You can be a beginning artist, you can be a world-class professional. I've seen, as a classically trained musician, as a composition student, as a music student in a college setting, or outside the university in a city venue or something like that, I have seen hubris. I have seen vitriol among artists just because they're too proud of their work. Artists do not get a pass for promoting something, and then if they get flack, then start getting defensive and angry and start attacking. Just because a piece of art is out there doesn't mean it's invulnerable or impenetrable. I can't, you know the word I'm looking for. Impenetrable. Sometimes, like when you're live streaming, like I could spell the word in my head, but I can't say it out loud right now. That's okay. But anyway, just because you have something released doesn't mean it's you're guaranteed protection, or your piece is guaranteed protection, and that's okay. That's okay. I saw a lot of artists in Seattle when I was in Seattle who, it's kind of sad to say, and I want to say this with grace, but they really thought their art was good. Their art was, so I'm not saying this of all Seattle artists, but places I went to, exhibitions I went to, or not exhibitions, but more like a musical concert scene, where I saw it in their eyes, and I see it in their expression, in their faces, like they think they've composed a masterpiece. And they'll have friends who say that, but it's not true, So, if they're called to account, if their piece is called to account, I'm like, no, it's lacking here. It could have been, this was a 22-minute piece that really could have been a 9-minute piece. Oh, dude, you got to be careful with your words, because they'll get defensive. There is hubris. Artists do struggle with hubris, and it's important that we don't. It's important we fight that spirit as artists, especially if you're a Christian. You have to fight that spirit of pride and kind of getting territorial about your art. I did a commentary video earlier this year on why you shouldn't take your art seriously. Oh wait, no. Sorry. No, I said that wrong. I said take your art seriously, but not personally. At the point of release, that piece of art is out there for the world to interpret as the world will interpret it. Different people will interpret your art not in any way you intended, or maybe all the way you intended, which is awesome. They'll surprise you, like, wow, I love this. And you think, wow, I didn't even intend to make it that way for that person, for my audience. But you let go. You do have to let go of your art when it's released on some level. Of course, you're connected to it. You love it. Sometimes I'll go back to older pieces and listen to those album tracks and think, well, yeah, I still like that I did that. Oh, okay, I don't care for how I worked this instrumentation and stuff like that. I do go back to previous projects and see what needs improved. But the whole idea is it's very, very important to practice kindness and letting go, and developing a backbone to take any criticism into account. It's not to say you have to be walked all over. Don't let people just berate you or belittle you. No. You don't take that kind of behavior. And professionals, I do think professionals know how to handle those kinds of situations. But anyway, yeah, that's another thing to work on, is not being defensive. So if you do actually, anyone out there, if you guys do feel like if you have a bit of critique or feedback on your art, by the way, if you're getting feedback and critique on your art, that's awesome. That's better than no feedback, right? Don't get defensive. Don't learn not to get defensive, because most people who want to see you do well in your craft, they want you to get better. Maybe that they might not phrase it correctly, or maybe they say it in a way that might put you off a little bit. But I think generally people who want to see you do better, they'll say it the way they say it. Anyway, I think that was hope that wasn't too long a rant. Jedi Master Utopia says, I love paintings of dogs playing poker. I kind of like those paintings too. Melissa Harris says, I love art. Yeah, art is important. And Brian, actually makes a good supplemental comment to what I've been saying. Is it can be rough and it's not comfortable, but no one likes, because no one likes to be criticized. You're right. It's not a comfortable feeling, but it is necessary if you want to get better. Yeah, I could see my students sometimes not be comfortable with me in the session, in the room with them. I just want them better as violinists, as players or musicians, or just teaching them how to improve on anything, a sport, another musical instrument, another art form that they might get into, cooking, culinary stuff, whatever it is. Yes, classic animation. Yep. That's good stuff too. Yeah. And you're bringing a good point. And if I know this is a dialogue to exchange between you and Brian, practice. Practice. Getting any kind of feedback is a good sign, because your art is getting traction. The worst is. This is why I got off Facebook personally. I did I tell you guys this? Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I will repeat myself. I'm on the Facebook group page, with Professor Geek, but I don't have a personal account. And the one thing that the thing that broke the straw that broke the camel's back for me with Facebook, besides the scandals, but this was way before all those things, was I remember finishing my first electronic piece, and I was so proud of it. Now a lot of it, I listen, I hear the composition, and I think that's good composition, but as far as the production, I'd have to really reconsider, before I'd ever release it. But I did post it on Facebook, and at the time I was following all my college friends and all my friends on Facebook who supported the arts. It's amazing how many people I've met so many people who kind of claim, or even just by their dress and how they wear their hair, they're trying to show you that they support the arts. There's nothing more infuriating when you post something on Facebook and no one says, and I even said it when I first posted my first electronic piece on Facebook. I said, I'm so proud of myself. Please share. Support the artists. Guys, this is me, doing my electronic music. None of my friends who are even music majors, none of my friends who supported the arts even shared, even liked. They didn't even like. That's the easiest thing to do in the world, is to share or like something, right? On social media. I had my landlady, who actually was a really good artist. I had my Romanian landlady, who she was just such a good painter. And it's like, she was my support. And she had great art that I tried to tell her, you got to sell this stuff, because she was really a very good painter at the time. That actually, I stopped doing Facebook after that because that was frustrating. It's not sharing all this stuff and not having anything. So if you have constructive criticism, even if it comes off a little bit like, I wanted my art to be liked instantly. No. Actually having constructive feedback or having some observation, someone observing something of your art, that's better than people ignoring it, right? Ignoring, yeah, people ignoring it, that's kind of feedback too. But yeah, I think, yep. So let's see. I'm going to try to pronounce these names, Brian, so forgive me if I don't. I go back and forth between Western artists like Patrick Spazianti. Is that how you pronounce his name? I should look him up. And Jim Lee, as well as Japanese artists like Haruki Suetsugu. Suetsugu, right? Is that how you pronounce his name? That's good. I like posting these so I can go back to these videos and see what you've recommended if when I have the time. Doing some advertising, Mr. Matchstick. We've watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. Have a good stream. Thank you, Mr. Matchstick. Yeah, appreciate that. Professor Geek says, excellent point about seeking affirmation over criticism. I see that in editing too. How do you suggest the artist balance the innate need to be read and heard and enjoyed with their need for feedback? Well, I will say this. Practicing your craft every day, and as long as you can, even if you could do it, ideally a few hours every day if you can, between work and sleep and all that, especially if you don't have family. Practicing every day will get you really the feedback you need. And here's why. I've come to a point in my producing music where I know where I want to be 5 to 10 years down the road. And I know, and I listen for what needs improved. I'm working on an album. I would love to complete it by this year. I hope to at least complete the album by this year. It might not get released until beginning of next year, but I have 8 older tracks I'm just trying to beef up and stuff like that. And I listened to this old, orchestration of electronic music where it's like, oh, ooh, I was just starting. Actually, these are pieces from 5 years ago or so, or 6 years ago, when I was really starting and exploring electronic music outside the academics. And with practice, you do get natural feedback. You do start getting critical of oh yeah, got to tighten this up. I finished a percussion section on one of the pieces, and the instrumentation, the structure's there. The structure's nice and tight. Could probably have a little bit of embellishments in between transitions of the harmony parts and kind of this arpeggiated melodic line that's going on. But the instrument's not there quite right. The actual sound color, I've got to change that. I've got to beef up the harmony. I've got to slightly widen the bass. So when you're practicing your craft, especially after a length of time, like 5 or 6 or 7 years, you already are natural. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is if I get absolutely no feedback on Twitter or YouTube or Bandcamp or the Professor Geek Facebook page, as much as I would want feedback, positive or negative, positive or constructive, or compliments or otherwise, I've come to the point where I would really only need actual professional feedback from the artists I listen to, from the professionals themselves. Now I haven't actually, Stefan Torto sometimes is on. He's seen some of my videos and commentary, and he's been on the stream too. If you're watching, hi, your stuff is great. Man, and your sound design, if you're watching, amazing. I wish I was at your level. Your style is different from mine as far as musically, but man, your sound design and you're self-taught too. I think it says on your Twitter. But people like Stefan Torto, who is professionally releasing things, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify, or actively releasing music in some form. That's the professional feedback that I would like. But if it's crickets, you know, if there's no one that retweets my stuff on Twitter or something like that, I don't take it so personally because I just keep going. So after you practice every day, after you're practicing your craft every day for about 5 years, like, you know, after 5 years, you know, after a 4-year stretch of practicing your craft every day because you just love it and you want to get better, but you also just love it, you just enjoy it. It's got to bring joy. You have to have fun doing this. And the professors at the University of Washington would probably disagree with me. They would say, no, it has to be hard. No, you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy your craft. I have enough, I absorb enough art. I practice my craft enough where if it's just crickets, I already have that balance. Well, okay, this was a miss. You know, in terms of public viewing, this was a miss. You know, people, I didn't get the reception as I thought I would. And then what do you do with that? You just take it as that. You take that as a kind of feedback and then just keep moving and keep working. But I will say the way to get actual feedback on things like social media, YouTube, Twitter, and the like, is putting things out frequently. Because my last video, I whipped it together because I had that wedding gig, so I just didn't have time to do like a SuperCollider video. I just got back from a pretty long trip. But I recorded 6 of my 8 pieces for the album. But I've been doing that or that kind of thing weekly on my YouTube channel. So it's going to naturally get some kind of feedback because of that. I hope that answers your question. I want to see if I've got any other suggestions for that. And you see that in editing too. Yeah. So I can understand as an editor, you probably get people who pay you just to say how great they are, right? How do you suggest the artist balance the innate need to be read or heard and enjoyed with their need for feedback? Yeah, enjoying the process as well. Practice, enjoy the process, and just keep doing art the way you do enjoy. Ever since I left college, I really haven't struggled with feeling obligated to doing something. I wanted for the longest time to compose for businesses and companies. I've wanted to do sound design. I've wanted to do, you know, sound work, even Foley work, you know, for film and stuff like that. I was ready to pay another pretty pricey tuition for that kind of stuff before I realized I actually just like making my own stuff. And if I never make a dime on it, cool. I mean, I just enjoy it so much. I enjoy it. So I would never really ask artists to feel obligated, like they have to do their art a certain way to appease a market. And then you could say, well, Sound Engraver, you're talking about being a professional artist. You know, professionals make money, right? Right, that's true. But also thinking professionally, you have to have a professional mindset as well. How much? I think I got an email on my Bandcamp sales. I think in the last 18 months, I rounded $250, which I actually didn't even know. I'm sure half of that was my mom. But I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize I made that. I mean, it was in like, you know, so it'd be like $1.71 1 week, maybe, you know, $5, you know, 2 weeks down or something like that. So really increment, you know, like nothing to make off a living. But even if it's just that for the rest of my life, even if I make just chump change over my music, that doesn't matter because it just brings me so much joy. I have to compose. Like I have to keep working in sound. When I troubleshoot in SuperCollider, it's just weird, but it's like, yeah, I love it. Like I love, even if I have a problem in SuperCollider, even if something's not working and I get frustrated, it's kind of like this good frustration. Like it fills me up. It's so fulfilling being in SuperCollider, even though I know the things I want to produce in SuperCollider, the things I want to produce in Logic Pro, I'm still years away from what I want to really do, like the music I really want to produce. But the joy of doing that, the joy of having that process, that fulfills me. So that's where I find my balance. But I don't think that comes without practicing every day and loving your craft. I think you have to have that balance. I think you have to have that balance even to receive criticism, really. You have to be in a centered place where you're confident enough in your skill, but you know enough to know what needs improved on and polished. And Daniel Craig is in the house. Looks like I missed the whole thing. My little lecture, I don't think it was too long, was it, guys? I think it was short. But of course, this is all recorded. Gordon Ramsay is a chef. Oh, is he a famous one? Now that kind of sounds familiar. I don't watch TV though, guys. You know this about me. I haven't like so my guys, get this. Okay. I went to Idaho. My sister got married, and so we were at her fiance's home. Actually, I stayed on the bottom level of his home, and it was the first time in my life. First time. I didn't realize this until probably now. First time I had ever seen a smart TV. That's how long I've been away from a TV. The closest and the most recent I've been near a TV is if I needed a new shirt from Walmart and I happened to pass the electronics aisle. So if Gordon Ramsay is a famous guy, a famous personality who has a TV show, that's probably why I wouldn't know him. So that actually, sadly, that's why I don't know his way of critiquing. Now, I would say, here's and you develop this kind of discernment over time, over practice, and just knowing people over time. You're going to develop discernment and discretion on people who could be manipulative or people who are condescending. So that from there, you just be polite and just say okay, and then walk away. Don't be condescending back, and don't pick a fight with them. Just say okay. I hear you. Thank you for your comments. Actually, I've had snippy comments on my YouTube channel videos, and I would just thank them. Like, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Owen Lister says, I just need to get over my fear of harsh criticism. I always get that. Get the pit of the stomach feeling. Oh yeah, I get that. So yeah, I need the feedback just to get over my fear and ignore the feeling. Oh, so it's more a visceral reaction. Oh, I know about visceral reactions. That is for sure. It will take practice and exposure. And so I would say for you, Owen, again, I think you're in your early 20s. I was the same way in my early 20s. If I'm wrong about that, forgive me. But I think I have a general impression that you're something in your early 20s, or maybe just turning 20. And at that age, I was very impressionable, and I took things very personally. And I would respond viscerally to different things that were hard to take in. I would say for that, then just be patient with yourself. Be patient. Don't be critical in a spiritual way. Don't get down on yourself. Just be patient with yourself, and then just practice. I think I just generally take criticism a little bit better as I've gotten older. I think it comes with age as well. It might not. I don't know. Maybe people older than me wouldn't be able to take criticism either. SoundCloud, I enjoy your lack of knowledge regarding popular culture. You and the project managers that I worked with, and I enjoy your trivia. I enjoy your love of trivia. So, yeah, I have total. I don't know who is who. I don't know actors' names. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Brad Pitt, right? No, that's Chris Hemsworth. No, I mean, I'm better now that I'm starting to watch the Marvel movies. No, but as far as actors, movies, references to movies, shows, personalities, sports, don't even try approaching me with sports. Yeah. Gordon Ramsay is a British chef who hosts MasterChef. Oh yeah, I have heard of that. Oh, that's is that like where it's really like okay, guys, I gotta separate something really important here. If that show that you're mentioning, Melissa, is like that drama, like kind of that overly dramatic, overly hyped, like America's Got Talent or whatever, that's they're just playing the drama. They are just playing for the clicks and the views. That's not real criticism. That's I mean, I would be very concerned if you guys like went to a music teacher. Let's say you wanted music lessons, and then you had a teacher with that kind of personality. That kind of mode of criticism, that is only hamming it up. That is only people hamming it up. They might be like that in real life, but they are doing that for the views. I don't watch TV, but Two Set Violin, the comedic duo, they're classically trained violinists. They have roasted America's Got Talent, and you can see how things are really staged. And they really go deep into how things are staged to get you like a manipulated response as a viewer. It's a manipulated psychological response. That's not real teaching, and that's not real criticism. So sorry, Gordon Ramsay, you're probably a master at what you do, but you're probably a ham while you're roasting that ham on your show. And I say that lovingly. Like I don't want to like criticize someone I don't know. But no, being a ham, actually, that they're paid to be a ham. They're paid to kind of drum up that drama. So no, that's if it's what I think it is, no, that's not actual criticism or good instruction. No, I'm talking about real life teachers, instructors, mentors, professors, professionals who don't do it for the clicks. Melissa says, looks like Big Al with frosted tips, spiked blonde hair. I think I've seen him. I'm sure he's on a famous magazine cover I've seen at a grocery store or something. Yeah, I don't even think as a 17-year-old I could get into reality TV. I think the closest thing I got to reality TV was when I was a kid enjoying Price is Right with Bob Barker. I think that's the closest thing to reality TV I ever got exposed to. I don't touch that stuff. I remember though, I do remember living in a house, I think I was 20 or something, and the TV was on, and I think the show The Biggest Loser was on. And I remember this guy, he weighs himself on the scale and he gains 3 pounds, and it's like the most dramatic music, and he's crying, and it's like and all the like the training coaches, they're like, I was like, well, maybe it's muscle, guys. Maybe he's doing such a good job, he's gaining muscle. But like the okay, I'm sure they sprayed his face too, and he's just kind of having to put his hand over his face or something like that. Yeah. But even as like a 19-year-old, I was like, this is this. You know, why do they call it reality TV? It's not reality. People don't act like that in real life. I mean, most people anyway. Where am I in the chat? Okay, so it's 10:50. I'll try to catch up with comments, and then I'll definitely end probably at the 2-hour mark. All right, back to the drawing board. It says, one of my biggest struggles as a visual artist is finding people who give feedback I can use. Many people have told me my art doesn't work. Only if you have really made me understand why. Oh, that's a really good point. Feedback with reasons. You know, as a music teacher and as a professional musician, I give feedback, you know, forward or not, positive or not, whatever the case may be, with reasons to help people understand. You know, teachers, you know, music teachers, you got to be two things. As a music teacher, you have to be a professional musician, and you have to be a teacher. I've noticed, and I thank the Lord that I have a natural ability to teach, whether I continue as a music teacher or teaching some kind, maybe in the form of, you know, something like this on YouTube. Teaching doesn't come naturally for a lot of people, meaning you could be so good at something. You can be an expert at something. But if you cannot convey in a way for another person who's a novice and just can't understand, then you've lost them. And I'm sure I've shared my experience at the University of Washington, where I had one well-meaning programmer instructor and one not so well-meaning programmer instructor. They knew the ins and outs of SuperCollider. You know, actually, the guy was one of the first people involved in SuperCollider. He built a lot of the unit generators and worked with that. And then his assistant, who was also pretty good at programming, well, being good at programming, if you're teaching a class, that class was weird because in a way, so you had a composer who was a programmer trying to teach programming to composition students. And then you had a kind of a sound artist guy who was also a programmer trying to teach music to programmers. It was like, okay, I'm a programmer who knows nothing about music. I'm a musician and composer who knows nothing about programming. So it was two teachers just kind of trying to convey a sense. And then like I would look at these lectures and I would try so hard to understand what they were saying. And then the programmers were like, yeah. Now, granted, their compositions were not so good, but they knew the syntax. But I remember one of the instructors, he was so frustrated with me for not getting a basic concept. But then, lo and behold, 5 years later, or probably 3 years later, depending on when Eli Fieldsteel started his channel on SuperCollider, we've got a person on YouTube who not only knows SuperCollider, but he knows how to teach SuperCollider to non-programmers. That takes skill. To know how to do something, then know how to teach it. It does come with a level of natural ability to be able to do that. And so, yeah, back to the drawing board. If you've even had a few of those who could tell you why something didn't work, that is excellent. And then you'll get like, sometimes I've had students who I would say something and I would say why it's so, and they wouldn't believe me. Maybe they thought I was fresh out of high school. I try to think it like that. Yeah. It's the people who can make me understand what's not working that I go back to. Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. That's a very good form of criticism, where they tell you why, or they tell you what's wrong. Yeah, actually, sometimes when I have a SuperCollider demo, sometimes Eli will watch them, and then he says, "Oh, you're doing this, but it's actually ineffective." And I'll see why it's ineffective, and it helps me. It's not, I don't feel defensive like he's calling me out, like, oh, he's calling me out on my YouTube video. No, I learned everything in SuperCollider that I've learned and show on YouTube. I learned from him. So he can spam my comment section with information and advice. Probably wouldn't look good on YouTube, and he's not the kind of person that would do that. But I always appreciate, even when someone calls me out on doing something. And then I have programmers who go on my SuperCollider demos who just belch a thing of code, but they don't say why it's much more effective. I was like, well, I might be doing something ineffective, but tell me what. He's like, well, essentially it's this and this, and you're doing this and this, and it's like, wait, no, I mean, well, it still makes the same sound. But I tend to encourage those programmers who like to belch syntax on my comment section, which I leave for people to see. I'm totally fine with programmers saying, no, you got to do it this way, even if they don't tell me why. Their code is there to stay. But what I do, I hope to encourage programmers who do that on my channel to start their own YouTube demos, because that really does help. It's I love going to Eli Fieldsteel's channel, and his channel is integral to my learning of SuperCollider. But the people who want to really nitpick on how I do things, well, just know, programmers, I'm not a programmer. So you have to tell me why I'm doing something ineffective. And if you don't, well, I just highly recommend you post your own YouTube channel and do like 2-minute demos and say why it's so. But that's my feedback to you. My feedback on your feedback. Oh, yeah, good point, Brian. It sounds like a big part of accepting criticism is checking your ego at the door, so to speak. Yes, sometimes now there's a healthy ego we have, and then there's a prideful, unhealthy ego that we have, and we have to really keep that bad ego in check and try to remove it altogether if possible. But you really don't know. You really I've learned that you don't realize you have an ego until you're given that kind of feedback, and then you're like, oh, I reacted viscerally this way. It's like I'm starting to get flushed in the face and kind of getting, ooh, like I want to pick a fight, and then it's like, no. That's an indication to me, at least for me, that I have some pride I have to remove. I have some, almost, I know this sounds strange, but territorial issues about my art that I have to remove. Being defensive is not defending your art. You can defend your art without being defensive. Like I can defend my faith in God and my Christian faith without being defensive. It's hard, but you got to learn how to do it. And sometimes, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm sure I've been defensive on some occasion. But I practice. I practice not being prideful. Looks like there's a bit of an exchange here coming. Oh, one for me by Daniel Craig. Daniel says, in tango, a lot of really good dancers are snobs and won't give beginners the time of day, thinking they are spent so much time, they only deserve to dance with the best. Oh, continued. I took the approach of working with and encouraging the beginners and giving them a year to improve. If they showed any sign of effort, we continued. If not, I wouldn't sacrifice my back for them. That's I do struggle with that. Because as a violin instructor, I want the best for my students. And it's not that they need to know violin. It's not that they need to master violin, but I try to give them the habit building that endurance to get good at something or get proficient in something. It doesn't have to be music, but it prepares them for endurance. Practice is endurance, and I want to prepare my students for that. I have had students, I hate saying this, but unfortunately there have been students I have been so happy that have finally quit. Not often, rare. Some students try hard, and some students quit knowing that they want to do something else, and that's cool too. But I remember this girl. She wouldn't get better after 2 years of my instruction. One was she didn't practice, and the other thing too was she didn't listen. Now people could say, well, practice, not practicing is bad enough. Actually, I've had bright kids who wouldn't practice, but if they listened on what to do, they would pick it up naturally. And then I would say, well, how much better would you be if you practiced while listening to me? But yeah, I had someone who just, she started with me with very atrocious technique, because I think there was another teacher who taught her before me, and I could not get it better, and I was quite frustrated with her, and I was trying to plead with the parents with my eyes, because I'm a contractor, so I can't be so forward. You kind of have to be diplomatic, but it's like, your daughter is not getting good. Not only is she not getting good, she's not improving by an inch. And I give her everything she needs. She just needs to practice and listen. When students finally realize, I have another student, when he realizes his potential after practicing 5 days during the week, you could see the brightness in his eyes. Like, he's so happy he got better. And he's one of those people, like, any kind of sound he makes that doesn't sound right, he's kind of finicky. And I've been hard with him, and I've been strict with him too, but he puts in the effort. And I am much more patient with the slowest learner. I have a girl who, bless her heart, she is the slowest learner I've ever seen, but she tries. And so I'm firm with her, but I'm also the most patient with her. It's when students stick with me for a year or two and there's no progress, I beg. I silently beg, because you can't say it, if you're either employed or contracted or something, but I silently beg to the parents. I try to do telepathy, get your kid interested in something else. She might be interested in something else. Maybe she just is a reader. Maybe she's just not into music and she just wants to read books all day. Actually, this kid in particular, she would always, a lot of lessons, when we did it in person before the pandemic, she would always kind of have a book with her. And I remember one time fetching her, for a lesson, and she was in her book. And I'm like, okay, time to go to violin lessons now, just for 30 minutes. Then you can go back to your book. But she was really into books. That's great. Get her into writing. Get her into reading more. That's fine. The time she put in her books, if I had just a fraction of that devotion to violin, things would probably be easier. But that, and any parent watching, I don't think parents know my YouTube channel. But if you do know me, if I've thrown my YouTube name out there, really understand that there's no progress, and they've been with me for a length of time, they might be interested in something else. Here's my advice for people, and I think you might have had this experience with tango, Daniel, and that is, get your child committed to a year, or at least 6 months, but definitely a year. Because when you start out something, you're not going to know. You're really not going to know what your potential is until after a year of commitment. But yeah, effort is appreciated. Effort is definitely appreciated, as you probably well know, Daniel. And as far as being a professional violinist, I would love to have more intermediate, advanced violin students to work with and actually talk about music. That's awesome. I have mostly beginners, and I work with them, and they're getting the technique they need. But when I actually talk about music, 30 minutes is like 3 seconds. Back to the drawing board. Says, yes, the Asian drive for musical excellence. Our Chinese grandfather got us instruments, and when we turned 6, and expected us to learn them. Didn't even check with our parents. Did that mean he was involved and not your parents? Sometimes it's a different family relative, but at least when I was in public school, the best of the best were people coming out of Japan, South Korea, and China. If they were going to America, if the families were coming to America. So I was surrounded by peers who were better than me. So when I became a co-concert master, I'm like, cool. Because it was a competitive. I was in an orchestra. I was a co-concert master in an orchestra that won competitions. It was really that drive. Oh, Lister says, my work schedule won't let me take an art class. I'll just let the feedback teach me. Yeah, you got to be careful too if you're looking at art lessons, because if you're an illustrator, you really should pay for lessons that for an illustrator to teach you. Yeah, I don't know how I can recommend art lessons specifically. For me, it's so specialized. I teach people the classical technique for violin, and then if they want to branch out into fiddle or jazz or whatever, that's fine. But they have the fundamentals for violin playing, or the fundamentals for piano before they move off to a more proficient pianist to teach them. I think for you, Owen, since you are an illustrator, you'd have to look around. I think you'd have to. It's easy for me. It's actually, let's say I was starting violin. It's very easy to find a violin instructor. I wouldn't really know where to look for as far as an illustrator. For you as an illustrator, though, it's definitely you wouldn't need that. You definitely wouldn't need an art degree. You wouldn't need an art degree because they would most likely teach you how to do more academic experimental art. Now, the great thing about the art degree is you learn art history. But you could walk into a university, you can walk into the School of Art, sit in the library for a couple hours, absorb, and then boom. And you can do that for free. I hope. But yeah, I think yours is a little bit more specified. Or not specified, specialized. So finding an illustrator, maybe check out online. You said work schedule. I don't buy that. Sorry, I'm too strict about that. If you work 40 hours, you can find time to get better on your art. I'm saying that as a teacher. I've taught art. I've taught adult students, and I've taught adult students who would work 40 hours a week. Who would go on business trips. And I would still hold them accountable. So no. They found time, so you can too, if that's what you're looking for. I know that sounds a little harsh, but maybe it's just me being a teacher. Paid lessons is not art degree. Don't get an art degree, but paid lessons at least for 6 months. Try it out for 6 months. Try it out for a month. I would try that. I would try that avenue. I would take that avenue and experiment with that, because that would really help. But yours is specialized, so I don't know where you could find an animator. Yeah, maybe look around for animators to teach. But no, don't let your work schedule tell you that you can't. An art lesson is 30 minutes a day, or 30 minutes a week, 30 to 60 minutes a week. If you have time for movies, you have time for art lesson. And by the way, Owen, I'm not saying that to you directly. I would say that to anyone. Yeah. Try to make time for, if you have the money, you have to have the budget, obviously. So if that's an issue, then that's would be a harder thing to work at. Maybe you'd have to spend half a year saving for art lessons or something. But talk to a local animator, or talk to an animator of a nearby city. Maybe they do online animation lessons. I'm sure you can find something. I'm almost positive you can find something. Find the biggest city near you and talk to local animators. I think they would look at their art, see if that's the kind of style you're after, and take a trial lesson. Some people offer trial lessons. When I teach, I only have one composition student. I believe I gave him a compliment. I gave him a complimentary lesson, an hour, 60 minutes, free. So, and some of it was feedback because we had nothing to work on. But no, some people will give you a trial for complimentary. Troy has to point out that both Star Wars and Star Trek have been ruined. That will get me a thumbs down by CBS All Access and Disney. Jedi Master Zootopia says, I think it's how you communicate with rather than what you are saying. It's better to say, next time you might want to try this rather than you did this wrong. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It is about how you say it, not always what you say. Brian says a picture of Tails with one of the ladies from Dynasty Warriors in front of an ice cream stand. Oh yeah. That angle was pretty cool too. I did see that one. Yeah, very good. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Netter. Well, thank you for having me remember. Actually, this one actually has the heart. Yeah, good. Couple exchanges. Yes, Troy, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up, James 4:10. I'm actually going through the book of James. Likewise, submit yourself to the teaching of your teachers as to the Lord if you want to elevate your art. Absolutely. Oh, okay. Oh, I don't want to put that on the screen. Okay. Yeah, I thought you were around that age. Yeah. I remember taking things pretty personally at that age. It comes with practice and patience. Oh. Yes. Thank you for your scriptures, Troy. For the Lord takes delight in his people. He crowns the humble with victory. I want to say that's a Psalms, and I want to say that's Psalm. Oh, I want to say Psalm 62, but don't quote me on that. I'll have to look. I'm going to look probably after the stream. Back to the drawing board says, when I took fiction writing in college, I heard a lot of people say the class didn't understand what they were doing after their piece got workshopped, as if making them understand. That, if I get what you're saying, back to the drawing board, yeah, that's kind of an academic approach too, where it's easy to like take something, workshop it, and just kind of throw in your suggestions. That's feedback you have to be careful about, actually. As a composition instructor, I want to give suggestions, but sometimes suggestions come in the form of, oh, well, if you do it in this measure in this way, or this in this way, or the harmony this way. No, what am I doing for them? I'm composing for them. that's not good feedback. So I actually have to pull back. Sometimes I have to dial down and say, okay, no. I want to say what's working in this area. Let's find some suggestions or alternatives to improve it in this way. And then I'll give my suggestions, and then I'll try to let the student kind of work with those, and then, bring it back to me next week. Oh, you said wasn't a part of the job as the author. Maybe I'm getting confused about who. Let's see. When I took fiction writing in college, I heard a lot of people say the class didn't understand what they were doing after their piece got workshopped, as if making them understand. Oh, as if making them understand wasn't a part of their job as the author. As if making them understand. Yeah, I can see that. It takes discernment. Yes, it is better to have your art loved or hated. The worst is for it to be ignored. Obscurity kind of hurts. Yeah, that's true. I saw a video. Thor Skywalker had a video, and I'm not saying this to bash the director Rian Johnson, but I saw a video that he had posted. Thor Skywalker had posted of Rian Johnson. He looked like he was on a college campus. He looked like he was straight out of being an art major or filmmaker or whatever, a film major. And this is so academic. This is such an academic thing to say. He said, I would love a group of people who would just love my film. And then I would love a group of people who would just hate my film. I was like, well, you did it, man. Academic project approved and success, because that's what The Last Jedi was. And that's, it's kind of sad. And I don't bash Rian Johnson. He's a person. He's a human being. He needs prayer. But that is an academic move. That is an academic sentiment. What Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi, totally out of the university setting in terms of art major and liberal arts major. I have heard often. As a composition major, it's like, oh, and this group of people will understand my art, and this group of people will loathe my art. But that's the thing. That's the thing with the music majors. If they got bad flack for their art, and objectively so, if rightfully so, if they got flack for being objective and critical, to the point where it was, I don't like saying I loathe something. I don't like to have that spirit, but some people could loathe The Last Jedi, right? That to a composer in the academic setting is like, I'm not saying it's a dream come true, but it's a validation. It's a validation that they've done something groundbreaking. So if that's the case, no wonder he's congratulating himself, because he made it happen. I'm kind of impressed. And that's as far as my impression, being impressed will go. But that's another rant. Daniel Craig says, "Was this what was this first piece? Can we still hear it?" I actually don't know if I have it on file anymore. It might be on an old machine. I'll have to look for it. I like it. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. It was my first composition piece. I would have to clean up some of the output and some of the instrumentation. It just doesn't. There's one point where it just doesn't sound clean. But I actually, I was very proud of that one. I'll see if I can remember to find it. I just think, I feel like it's in a different machine. Oh, and Lister says, one second. I do get trouble getting any feedback on Twitter, though I do feel, when I do get feedback, whether a good job or an actual critique, I do get happy. Yeah, that's important. Now, here's the thing. Now, this is not like a business entrepreneur strategy, like hustle and drive. I'm not saying this. This is just from experience. I support artists, and I definitely promote their work when I feel like, first of all, I love their style. Second of all, I think their art is objectively good. If it misses the mark at different points, I don't retweet their stuff. So when an artist has, I mean, I'm no big shot. Like I'm not saying I'm a big shot, but when if you're an artist out there who follows me on Twitter, if I recommend your album and I retweet your album and I say why I like your album, it's because I personally think as an artist it is objectively excellent. I always try to find people to support. So one reason why I have been getting feedback is not just because I've been frequently outputting things on YouTube, but on Twitter, I support artists if I can. Even if they're, it could be an artist making a whole ton of money. It doesn't matter. It could be an independent artist just starting. And if they have, there's this one guy, he had a debut album. What's his name? We follow each other on Twitter. Eclectic Electronic. It'd be on my iTunes. Well, I know he goes by this name. And I think he spells it this way. Eclectic. He spells it in an unusual way. The K is either before the L. Man, I want to give this guy some props. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go on my iTunes and just see. I'm hardly ever on my iTunes, but I bought a few of his albums. And one, okay, got it. All right, so let's see. ECL. Oh no, Apple gave me a pop-up sign, and I gotta ignore that. I think it's this way, and he does all caps. Eclectic. Yeah, I think it's this. He had a debut album, and production-wise, I was like, man, I wish that was my debut album. I don't know where he's based. Probably Denmark, somewhere. I think somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure. I forgot his actual name. But yeah. All right, I gotta catch up with chat. It's almost 11:30. We're hitting the 2-hour mark, but it feels good streaming, guys. I really have enjoyed this. So actually, when you do get feedback, Owen, that's great. And when you do get noticed, that's great. But extend that same courtesy. Start noticing other people and retweeting. I think you do that on your Twitter. I'm not like pointing that out. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to draw attention to you. Like, let's check on the Twitter and see if he does that. But what I do, this might be a separate topic. I'm not sure, but I promote work I believe is objectively excellent. I don't have to have a huge following. So, an artist can take it or leave it. Like, oh, well, Sound Engraver, she's got like 900 followers on Twitter. I do it organically, dang it. But I support people and I promote people who I think have done really good work. So if you find an artist, could be famous, could be just starting, could be somewhere in between, promote their work, promote their craft, and you'll get some circulation, even if it's just kind of a camaraderie going on between artists and stuff like that. So yeah, be courteous with people on Twitter. Like, really, really support them if you think it's objectively good. And it doesn't matter if they just have started or if they're famous. I support famous and not so famous. That's the way I do it. Aged Boomer, I'm so happy you stuck around because I know I thought you had projects on Monday nights. Would you say that giving proper feedback can be hard work? It sure depends. Like, Professor Geek is a professional editor, so that is work. That is work. I can imagine actually giving, especially a written critique, of something, or maybe it's over the phone. I don't know. People do it in different ways, but or an email, in the body of an email. Oh my goodness, an email would take time. So I could see from an editor or from a proofreader's perspective, I could see that taking time. For me, on my one-on-one lessons, it's because I instinctively know violin technique. It's pretty instantaneous. I know violin like the back of my hand, and I know teaching violin almost the same way, especially beginning level. So it can be hard work, but kind of like with anything, like with teaching, it just takes practice over time. I would say if you're starting out giving proper feedback, like let's say you're professional or you have a specialty and then someone asks you to take them under your wing, do start with the encouraging side of it, but spend a lot of time on the things that need improving. Oh, sorry. Sound Engraver, do you think the wrong choice of words can hurt the critique? Like you give a legitimate critique of someone's art, but comes across as snooty or negative. Well, first of all, if the critique is in the form of text, always be aware that text, even the most well-meaning text, like a Facebook post or something like that, or email. Oh, I've gotten into trouble with email. Like I would say something candid, but it comes out really candid in an email. Like it comes out like, I almost had a kind of a not really a spat with someone. I didn't mean for it to be so, but she took it the wrong way. That's what text does. That's what email does. So do be aware that a text in a text form, whether a post or an email, will always come out a little harder than if you were actually to hear someone's voice or to see someone's face. You know, this is why I actually got really into live streaming, because one, most of my favorite YouTubers, they do. I love commentary videos, but some do live streaming. Actually, most of my favorite YouTubers just do commentary videos, but some I hear their voice. Some I hear their voice and see their face. So if you can imagine me saying exactly what I'm saying right now without seeing my face or hearing my voice, you don't hear the inflection, you don't hear the nuance, you don't hear you don't see my eyes, you don't see the shape of my eyes, you don't see kind of the form of my lips into a smile. Sometimes I can frown, sometimes I can smile. You know, text will always come across, even if it's a well-meaning critique. Text will always come across as candid. I shouldn't say always, but often. Often text, let's say you have a fellow artist who says, oh, I noticed this about this, and I'm not seeing, you know, why, I'm not seeing the, you know, the reference here. What are you trying to go from this angle? What are you trying to go from this angle? Well, yeah, on text, that actually can look a little short, but it's not. That's not a critique. And as far as snooty or negative, welcome to the art world, man. Now, that I do not condone that behavior, and I certainly do not practice that myself. And if I do ever come across like that, people can call me out on that and hold me accountable, because I really do not want to ever come across prideful or arrogant. Never. I don't think anyone, they could be world famous. No one's really in the position to be arrogant. It's not, you're not in the right spirit when that happens. But with that, the caveat is that's the art world. Unfortunately, that is just part of being in the artistic community. You'll have some very prideful people in the classical music scene, in the visual arts scene, I'm sure in the massage therapy scene, for goodness sake. I mean, it's just, well, actually, probably in a lot of specialties. Now that I think about it, I'm sure that happens in you know, with psychologists, you know, or philosophers or doctors, or, you know, I think it happens everywhere. It could happen in businesses. I think it can happen anywhere, but especially in the art, the stereotypes are real, folks. Artists are sensitive. We're sensitive souls, but we have to practice not being sensitive. We have to practice being confident, but not overly sensitive. Hurt the critique, Owen? No, if the point comes across, then the critique has fulfilled its function. I know that sounds a little harsh, but if the point has come across and you received that, well, then it served its purpose. The problem is, if the heart behind it is not good, then what do? You pray for that person. That's what I do. If I feel like I've been hurt in any way, or if someone's been short with me or hostile, I just try to pray through it and get through it and pray for that person. But still take anything you can from criticism. Again, I kind of can't wait until I get to that point in my art where I do get criticism like that, because it means my art is getting traction, and that is a blessing. Yeah, I do that as a teacher, Owen. So what you're saying is, I think there should be a balance where the critique could be harsh but encouraging. I should clarify, harsh can be abrasive, so aggressive, so not coming from the right spirit. But it happens. Critique happens. Now, for me, I am firm. I'm firm and I'm forward with my students. I am strict. Critique can come in a strict way. My professors were they weren't mean. They had no maliciousness. They were short, though. They were short with me. They were candid. They were strict, and that's okay. That is okay. For me, I am strict, but I also provide encouragement as well. And so there's a blend. For actual being abrasive, you can't be abrasive and harsh while being encouraging. So don't. I would say for artists, if you're under a paragon, if you will, if you're under a mentor or mentor, don't count their strictness as something malicious, as something abrasive. So maybe I was a little bit obscure with my meaning there on the word harsh, because it could come off as harsh, but what it is strict, because the teacher knows what the professor or the instructor, they know what you have to work on. And especially if you don't listen or you don't apply what they're saying, oh yeah, they can get strict. Waylon Smithers. Have you seen Captain America Winter Soldier yet? In my opinion, it's one of the best Marvel movies. Okay, so I saw Captain America, and I've seen the first Iron Man. So I'm still just starting. And so I'm coming back from my trip. So I'm getting back into the routine. So now I'm really just composing and writing and planning for recitals online and stuff like that. But I try to watch a movie. I think I've been dedicating my Sunday nights to watching a film. So I think the next film I'm going to watch probably will be the second Iron Man film. I liked the first one. So no, I think it'll be, it's a ways down, right? The Winter Soldier. Oh, and Lister says, oh, we got to wrap it up soon. I'm enjoying this. Thanks, guys, for sticking around. Owen Lister says, I'd rather be a good storyteller than a professional artist making money, to be honest. I want my art to tell good stories, which means I need to take criticism, even if it is harsh. Now, you are in a bit, I wouldn't call it a conundrum, but you want to tell a story, but you're also an illustrator. I want you to consider this. I want artists to consider this. If you guys are capable of doing two things adequately, if you're so for you, Owen, and I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people would probably experience this in some way as an artist. If you really just want to tell a good story, focus on the writing. And what I would encourage, if you have it in your heart to publish this and publish this soon, I would really consider saving money for a professional artist. Show that person concept art or storyboard, like kind of give them an outline, show them storyboards, because what you've put out for on the Professor Geek Facebook group page, that kind of format, if you're really feeling like it's just taking too long, that kind of format could be perfect for like a storyboard. I say storyboard like it's going to be a film, might be, but it would definitely give a professional artist a frame of reference while you could focus on the story. Now, if that's not your dream, if it is your dream to do both of them exceedingly well, do know that will take time. Gesamtwerk. It's like Wagner, who did everything. Now, so I'll give you a couple examples. What I've been experiencing is, I have a huge story that I just need to tell, and I really need to keep plowing away and getting it proofread and edited so it will finally come out and released. I'm a ways from it because it's a pretty massive story. I aim to finish the first installment by the end of the year, plus an album. So I understand the pressure of getting it out, but I'm not an editor. I want to focus on my story, but if I've got an editor that knows how to shape things and make things work even under objective criticism, so be it. I just need it. With my music, with electronic music, with electronic music, I have so many artists I follow, and we keep in touch over Twitter. They not only can produce the sounds and compose, which I can do, they can mix proficiently and they can master their stuff. I know a few artists who can master their music. They have mastering engineering abilities. I wish I had that. That's a skill, though, that would take probably 2 to 3 to probably 5 years to get my music the way I wanted to sound and get that ear. That would take a whole another time of training to get that. So what do I do? Well, I focus on what I love the most: composing and sound design. Composing and sound design. A little bit of mixing here and there, a little bit of panning, a little bit of tightening up the instruments, and then I send it off to a mastering engineer, and I pay the person, because I know it's like that's a skill. I realize, okay, maybe I'll do it in my 40s. Maybe I'll learn how to master my albums in my 40s. Cool. But I have no intention of learning it now, because why? I want to focus all my time on composing. And that's actually why, that's one reason why I've gotten fairly fast at producing music, is because when I get it done, I just send it over to the mastering artist, and he's pretty fast at mastering, and he has got incredible detail. And then boom, we've got a single or we've got an album. So that's actually what I want to encourage artists out there, maybe not in the composition field, but in the visual artist and storytelling field. What do you want to prioritize? Because if you really want to prioritize the story, maybe the story is yours, and maybe even the concept art is yours. The characters are certainly yours. So everything that falls under the umbrella of the story, that's all yours. But maybe that project is for an artist to take over. Because I know comic creators, that's what they do. Fourth Age is working on a project. He's part of the story, and he's got someone on the character design, and he's looking for a colorist. So he's paying an artist, and then he's looking to hire a colorist. He focuses on the story. So that's also something to consider. If you really do feel bogged down, like I am not getting this done, think about focusing more your skill and craft on one of the two. Because let me tell you, I compose and I play violin, but they kind of can integrate. Like I've been a violinist long enough to be a professional violinist, and I've been a composer where I could compose. I don't think I could be a storyteller and an illustrator. That is interesting. I mean, props for people who can do that. That sounds, first of all, like a lot of work. And second of all, it's they're two different art forms that take very different skills. So, yeah. I am so behind chat. Let's catch up. Oh, Logan Barrett. Cool. Nice to see you. Did you get that piece of art from Pure Data or Max MSP? I forgot what you worked in. I thought I never tried Max MSP. I know people always recommend Max MSP, but I'm quite content in SuperCollider. I've been told on my YouTube channel, like, why don't you do Max MSP? There's no syntax involved, and it's like, I know I'm not a programmer, but I'm not like a total dolt when it comes to SuperCollider. Owen Lister says, back to Real Steel, the film came out 2011. The score serves the film well, but I wouldn't say it's Danny's best, like Batman or Nightmare Before Christmas, but it is decent. Brian says, being a good teacher partly comes down to knowing how to talk to people who aren't quite on your level. Absolutely. That is so true. You know who's a really good communicator, guys? Professor Geek. Listen to, oh, yeah. You know, when he's doing his analyses, or whether it's through a rewatch or a writing workshop, whatever the case may be, listen to how he talks. Listen to carefully how he talks. He is a natural at teaching. A lot of teachers can't teach like that. But kind of, not to put the pressure on you, Prof, do what you're doing normally. But listen to how he says things. Because he is objective. He is objective of what he says and what he knows. But he knows how to communicate. That's what a teacher does. A teacher knows how to communicate. A music teacher knows how to communicate music, whether that be through musicality, or whether that's from expression, technique, but the ability to communicate. There are teachers out there that just do not know how to teach, unfortunately. They shouldn't even be called teachers. But then that's kind of hubris talking, right? Oh, speaking of the professor, to know how to do something and to know how to teach it. Great point. Yeah, well, you're a shining example of that, Prof. Teaching is its own skill. Just because a PhD researches and writes on a subject doesn't mean they know anything about teaching. Oh, how true that is. Yeah, I don't know the reference, but I'm sure I would laugh at that. Daniel says, when I was very young, I made the mistake of listening well, but never practicing. Interesting. I could have been an incredible martial artist if I hadn't skated by in that manner. It's true. It's true. It's the listening and the application. Jedi Master's Utopia, that is very true. You never find time for something you really want. You make time. Or kind of what you're saying is, if you really want it, you find the time. Now I know, I mean, I'm not digging at anyone who has full-time jobs but you know, the thing is, I had a full-time job. I didn't have a 9-to-5 job. I had an 8-to-5 job, and more specifically, I had a 7 to 6:30 job if you count commuting. And I always made time for my art. Because it was just too important to not put in. Now, granted, you know, my mom. Okay, you guys want inspiration? My mom's a full-time worker who takes banjo lesson. She did. Now she just practices banjo, but she takes voice lessons. There was one point where she took voice lessons from 2 teachers because she loved both of them so much and appreciated both of their methods, because they had different teaching styles for singing. Full-time worker, she found the time. And she does that for self-enrichment, you know, because she just enjoys it. No. I mean, again, I'm kind of forward when it comes to that kind of thing. 11:44, man. We're almost approaching midnight, and I stopped it right. Owen Lister says, I have to draw books. I have how to draw books and YouTube. I work in the evenings with a busy schedule, but I might be more free during the summer. I'm a school janitor plus a bus schedule to take me home. Yeah, good. And actually, that kind of job as you have is perfect as an artist. Cleaning and keeping things up, that is, and I'm not saying that it's not physically laborious, but when you have that physical labor and that cleaning where you're kind of used to it, then that's the kind of work that, yeah, your creative energy is so, like, you're probably ready to get into your art after that, which is great. That's so much better than having a job that takes a lot of creative energy. One reason why I don't struggle with this anymore. When I first started teaching music, I kind of had a struggle with being creative as a teacher and staying creative as an artist, because both were two creative tasks. I had to be creative how to find things to be effective as a teacher while also working on my art and troubleshooting. But when you have a job that kind of takes that doesn't take that I'm not saying it's not mental work, but it's not the creative work. Ooh, man, that is, you're probably so fired up to do art and stuff. That's cool. That's really cool. Oh, and Lister, that's a good point. With the pandemic, it is hard to find an art class. I teach online. Half of my students are still online, but you're right. Off to bed? Okay, good night. Good night, everybody. Hope it helped. Hope I didn't scare people with my strictness. Yeah, anyway, I gotta wrap it up too. Come, Troy, I can't. In the name and love of Christ, I can't bash Ryan Johnson. But I just want to point out that he got what he wanted as an academic. Oh, Troy. I don't think prayers come with that. Maybe a whooping, in the South. Like, okay, here's a prayer and here's a belt. Like, maybe I shouldn't bring up Ryan Johnson. I feel like there's gonna be like this bash coming on. Oh, Wolfton, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm trying to catch up with chat so I can move along. Oh, interesting. Uh-oh. Are you sure? Because I have a cousin who just married an underwater welder, which probably sounds like the scariest job on the planet. And I have a cousin once removed who just got into welding. So, but they're hard work. I don't know. Welders are hard workers, but are you a welder? Because, man, that's when I think of welding, I think of like pipes and stuff, like big stuff. Oh, Wolfton, if you just came here at 11:30, I started at 9:30. Give some examples of strictness, because I can be a bit rigid in my critique because I follow my own standards when it comes to art. Well, when I say strictness, yeah, I'm pretty strict with myself. But I can, because I just practice and I constantly evaluate and assess. By strictness, I also mean giving input to my students to get better. But that means also any example of critique that might come off as candid or strict, but is for the betterment of your art. Any criticism, yeah, you want the heart to be in the right place. I don't like seeing malice in someone's heart. It hurts my heart to see malice and negativity. But if the criticism betters your art, if it's for the betterment of your art, Take it. Oh, you might consider doing your own reaction videos to Marvel movies. They do pretty well on YouTube. Well, here's the thing. I know that's a thing, and it's kind of fun to watch when I see that, but I actually don't. Here's the thing, guys. Big Al knows this. Netter's Network knows this. Troy knows this. I don't watch a lot of movies, and when I do, I'm actually quite quiet. Now, I don't watch horror, so probably if I did watch horror, like I would be like, I'd scream and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't watch a lot of movies. I don't think I'd be fun as far as reacting to different things. But anyway. Oh, Wolf10, don't call people maggots. Sounds like orcs. Get you going, you filthy maggots. You know, when they're in Mordor, in the extended version of the Lord of the Rings. Hey, any thumbs down, guys? I did get a thumbs down a few videos ago. I was very happy. Yeah, actually, I think. Oh yeah, famous greeting. Thank you. I think I'm caught up with chat. Let's go ahead and plug stuff because actually we're getting into 2 hours and 30 minutes. That went by really fast for me. So okay, so here's the thing. There are so many things going on. And I don't want Troy Pacelli to be burdened with the task of doing link after link after link. So here's our strategy, Troy Pacelli. We've got to get people on the Facebook group page. It's just become too much where we're announcing everything. So you've got your rewatches and book studies on the Professor Geek channel Tuesdays and Thursday nights. You've got rewatches with Big Al Presents and Troy Pacelli and sometimes Netter's Network on Saturday nights. You got Fan Man with his Fan Man tonight on Fridays, but I think he's doing horror films leading up to Halloween. Oh, I hope he's doing well. I don't know if he went back to his house or not. He does that. He does his thing on Friday nights. He also does his Second Cup Cafe, but that could be subject to change depending on his teaching schedule and, of course, electricity with his home. We've got Study Hall with H. Boomer and Troy Pacelli, and they are great. We've got the Weeb Watches with Mr. Matchstick and Wolf10 and Wolf10 Media. We've got Green Lion Girl, who does online streaming, gaming streaming for you gamers out there on Wednesday nights. And we've got Daniel Heron sometimes with his soundtracks with Birdman. But in case I have missed someone, go to that Facebook group page because Troy has this excellent Professor Geek channel guide. He posts, I think every 2 weeks or so, he posts the schedule, the monthly schedule, I think, just to keep people updated. Awesome to see that. Also, if you have a live stream coming up an hour before, what do? You post it on the Facebook group page. I can't believe I am, supporting Facebook in this way, but I support the community. So, yeah, I mean, again, if you don't like Facebook, here's the thing. I don't use Facebook as a personal account. You do need a personal account to be a member, and you need to answer some questions to be a member. But I don't use Facebook besides going onto that page. So anyway, I think, okay, it looks like Wolf10 has rewatched this Sunday. So a lot of things going on, and yet there's going to be overlap. If someone wants to start something on Monday nights, that it's going to happen, as the community builds and people have different interests. There will be, overlap, and that is totally cool. There are only 7 days a week. So anyway, I think that will be everything for me. So until I see you guys next, which I probably will see you in the chat for tomorrow night, keep producing the art you love. Oh, wait a second. Sound experimentation every Thursday, whatever that's going to be this week. But until then, I see you next. Keep producing the art you love, and I will catch you later.